Hey, this is Taylor with Believe in the Run, and today I've had a little extra coffee. That might be evident in this review, but I'm also legitimately excited about this Brooks Cascadia Elite. It feels weird to say that, and I don't know why it feels weird. Like, to be excited about a Brooks, maybe that's what it is. Being excited about a Brooks feels weird. I shouldn't be so surprised on the trail running side because we've had shoes like the Catamount Agile, which was like truly innovative, and that's not often the words we use when we describe Brooks. They've been resting on their Ghost and Cascadia for years. And I mean, those are good kind of staple shoes for both the road and trail, but innovation itself hasn't been the most forward seen for Brooks as a brand. But again, we saw that in the Catamount Agile, won some Best in Gear awards for us, especially technical, light, fast trail running. We also have been really loving the Catamount. The 2 and the 3 especially were kind of like sneaky favorites for all of our trail reviewers, whereas the 4 really missed for me, but you know, they've been building for sure. Even shoes like the Caldera have really taken a turn for a performance long distance trail runner. And we can mention the Cascadia 19 as well. That got a really positive review from our trail reviewers. But now we have the Brooks Cascadia Elite. And you know, just from the silhouette, it looks like some of the other shoes that are out there. Virtually every long distance trail racer now, just like on the road side, we're finding a recipe that works and having slight nuances from brand to brand or shoe to shoe that make it work even better or for a certain purpose. And you know what? Even though this does have some similarities between this shoe and a few others, I think that's just a result of where we're at in the industry right now. It's not copying. So I've heard that comment many times of this looks like that, or it looks like that, or they obviously borrowed from this. Sure, there's inspiration all the way around. So let's just get into it right from the top on down, and we'll see how this similar recipe really performs in its own, even above and compared to a lot of other trail racers out there. And so for the Brooks Cascadia Elite, the thing that many people notice is this booty on here. It's a kind of like mid-ankle booty, a little higher than what we saw in the Prodigio Pro, a little bit lower than what was on the Tecton X3, and it really worked. I really like that racers are starting to get this integrated booty, not only for fit, but also for protection from the trail, keeping some things out of that heel collar, letting rocks and dust get in. This did really well with that, but what I really like it for especially is that comfort and foot security piece. So this booty up here, it's like a knit stretchy material. Okay, it just hugs around the foot and ankle really nicely, and it continues through the tongue. So there's no separate tongue, it's completely integrated, and I really like that. It really secures that midfoot and heel for confident running on a lot of different terrain. That's exactly what I felt in the La Sportiva Prodigio Pro that also had that integrated booty. It really sets itself apart for the more technical the trail gets. And I especially, again, felt that in the midfoot and heel. Just speaking of that heel a little bit more, again, structure is what lacked in shoes like the Hoka Tecton X3, but this one has a lot of nice structure. It kind of reminds me of the Caldera and the Catamount in that regard, of that there's a lot of structure to really help your foot feel nice and secure and locked in. Your ankle isn't moving around or your heel sliding around in this particular recipe, and I really like that. Again, I'm a broken record in this particular case because a lot of trail racers went hard in the paint for a light, and the heel structure was sacrificed because of that. Here, it's really nice. It's actually quite padded on the inside of that heel too, until you get to kind of that mid-heel range, right below your malleoli on either side, those knobbies on your ankle. And so again, that structure and that padding really sets itself apart for fit. So we have 2 things really going for it in terms of fit so far, which again, when compared to other shoes in this category, like the Tecton X3 or the Adidas Terrex Gravix Speed Ultra that had a really flimsy heel and made me feel less secure, especially especially when you'd, heel strike going downhill, and it just moving around just really doesn't bode well for confidence. But this one I felt really confident in terms of just a secure fit. Another kind of third point for fit, this Matryx upper, we've just come to love Matryx because one, it's always been a very durable material. That's initially why it's been used on some trail running shoes, but now they've figured out a way to really seamlessly map that on the foot. We've seen that in a lot of different trail runners, even just general trail runners, not just race day category, but in general, we're seeing this on a lot of different shoes. Sometimes they'll do different panels of Matryx, but the whole upper here, besides that knit integrated tongue and collar, is Matryx. And so again, it's just, they're able to map it really well, provide a nice enough structure for the foot to feel really secure all the way around. And so Matryx, just one of those standard things that we're just gonna probably always be in favor of. And again, there's no reason not to be in favor of it here, because even things like being more breathable, as in the past, they weren't able to achieve that as much with these really technical uppers. Nowadays, it's breathable, dries, and exits water real quick. And so Matryx upper, just all the way around, big fan. So as we're talking about fit, this is gonna be a big one for many people. The forefoot width in the Cascadia Elite is actually quite generous. It's quite wide. I'm not gonna say it's super wide. It reminds me of like the Caldera 8, and that it just simply has some room, especially width-wise. I have an average to like wide average forefoot. I got some bunions, okay? In my foot, both sides, one has a little bit bigger of a bunion than the other. Is this TMI? I don't know. But both feet really felt nice and had enough room to splay and just felt comfortable the whole time, no matter what distance or terrain I was on. And so the width is going to be something that's either really pleasing to many, especially for those using this as an ultra distance race day shoe. If you have a low volume forefoot, this might be a little too roomy, but thankfully that midfoot and heel are quite secure. Another note about the forefoot is that it reminded me of the Catamount Agile and even the most recent Catamount, in that the forefoot actually felt a little shallow, not too shallow, but shallow enough to feel like it has a little bit of a sandwich effect, helping the overall foot security just kind of stay in connection with that footbed. So I like how even though it was secure and roomy enough throughout the foot, but still helped you keep just really in contact with the footbed and feel confident that way. So that's a note. I also do want to note on the width and the overall volume and shape of this forefoot, I did have some sliding, especially when I picked up the pace, hitting some of those switchbacks, dancing around some rocks and roots. I did have some just sliding in the forefoot. I usually think it's fine if that doesn't extend to other parts of the shoe. If you have two parts of the shoe that are really secure, in this case, the heel and the midfoot could be really secure, and the forefoot wiggled around a little bit, I think that's fine overall. In my experience, that is going to be fine, but I did slip enough to where I wanted to figure out how to mitigate that. And what Brooks did here is they moved these two strategic lace eyelets down in the chain on the lacing chain. Typically we'll see these up a little higher into the midfoot, but these two eyelets that kind of sink further into that midline, they put those again down in the lacing chain. So I was able to actually pretty strategically lace up that forefoot spot in kind of like the bottom part of my midfoot to get more security in that forefoot. And it actually worked. I was able to do that. But the thing that kind of sucks on the other side of that is that because I was tightening up here, it kind of bit me on the arch of my foot here, right over the midfoot. And so I had to be secure and strategic about that too. So it took a while to really figure out all that. You really need to meet in the middle of what you're trying to do. If I want it to be really secure up here, I had to be mindful of how that affected further up the chain. And I was able to do it for the most part. Again, there's might be some sacrifice in terms of fit in that way if your forefoot is like mine and was sliding around. And so that's just something to note. Again, if I'm going the ultra distance, 50 miles, 100 miles, in that range, and the pace is going to be generally a little bit slower, it's probably not going to be of that much of an effect for you. So give and take a little bit there on the fit. One more note before we go down to the midsole is that these serrated laces are 100% worth it. Every time that they're on a shoe, I really appreciate it because the lacing that you do is the lacing that you get. So you get that fit throughout the time that you're in the shoe. They just lock in, and I really appreciate it. It's a no-brainer for many trail runners to be using it, especially for trail racing models like the Brooks Cascadia Elite. But let's get down to that DNA Gold, which is the same midsole that you could find in the Hyperion Elite 5 or the Hyperion Elite 4 PB, which I've run in, and it's the same as the Hyperion Max 3. And so this material is supposed to be 100% PEBA, and with that comes cushion, some energy return, and just great comfort overall. I would say, in my experience with their road racing shoe, that this feels a little denser. It's still quite soft, but it's not mushy. And so I don't know if that's just because they're using, a different technique or a slightly different amount of air within this midsole to make this foam. I don't know, but I'm glad that it actually is denser and more stable than the road shoe in comparison. And so I'm just going to say that off the start. It actually reminds me a little bit more of the material, the foam that's in the North Face Vective Pro 2, which is my all-time favorite race day shoe, and that it has, that really nice comfort, step-in feel, has cushion, but it's rigid enough to be stable. It really does hit a nice balance, especially for an ultra distance shoe, to have some of everything. No, it's not the most energetic, it's not the most squishy in terms of cushion, it's not the most stable either, but it has a good amount of all of those in this particular DNA Gold. And so at 39.85 millimeters, so effectively 40, and a 6 millimeter drop, so it's a 33.85 in the forefoot. Having all that underfoot is just really comforting, feels good. You'll notice that this forefoot rocker isn't as extreme as some of the other shoes in this same category. And again, I actually like that too. Efficiency over everything for the Ultra game. And we're seeing that in a lot of different shoes. We saw that in the On Cloud Ultra Pro, felt that in the Hoka Tecton X3, in the North Face Vective Pro 3. All of those are shoes that feel efficient over everything, but because of the foams and a subtle rocker, they do get a little bit of that zip. Again, efficiency and a little bit of fun is the winning recipe for a lot of these ultra trail racing shoes. And so I felt that here. And this forefoot actually is a little more subtle than those other ones that I felt really more along the lines of the On Cloud Ultra Pro as well. So that's one thing to note about this midsole. And also, because of this midsole material, they do save quite a bit of weight for how much stack there is. So compared to all of those others that I just said, this really lands right in there at 10.2 ounces for my size, which is 288 grams, a US men's 10.5. In the other ones, like the On Cloud Ultra Pro was the exact same weight. Tecton X3 has a little bit more lugs underneath, but came in at 10.3 ounces. But that North Face Vective Pro 3 was quite a bit heavier, actually, with similar stature at 11.5 ounces. And the Pebax Speed Ultra, which is a lot more peppier than this shoe overall, but that one came in at 9.9 ounces. And so it's really in there with all of the best in terms of ultra racing shoes. So that's something to note as well. One thing I really loved about this underfoot ride, it is quite stable inherently. This is a wider base. I really like that, especially as you go higher. We can thank Hoka for figuring out that recipe for us. It's very Hoka-like in that sense, is that it feels naturally stable. It's a wider shoe, and that also has more good things as we go to the outsole in a little bit. But also having this foam, and the SpeedVault Plus plate in here, which again is more geared toward that efficiency and stability more than propulsion that we see in the roadside. I love that many shoes and brands are making that possible, because that's what you need more than anything else. Even though I love the excitement of an extreme toe off and just that pop you get, that sensation you feel, it's not the most important for an ultra racing shoe. And that's okay. I've come to terms with that, and hopefully we all can. Again, the SpeedVault plate, it's a Pebax plate, but it's carbon infused. And so some things we'll get from that is just, it's gonna be lightweight. It's going to be a little more flexible than a pure carbon plate. And so you get some of that torsional ability, but it also feels very nicely performance enhancingly stable. I'm going to say that again. It feels performance enhancingly stable. Is that how I want to say it? At any rate, it actually enhances performance. That's what I want to say. And in the same way, even for toe off, you can see how it bends more in that forefoot. Okay, you have some energy return, a little bit of snap, and a little bit of stability in that forefoot as well. And so I really like that SpeedVault Plus plate. It feels seamless. I don't feel it anywhere within there in terms of rigidness or poking through underfoot like we've seen in some others. It just fits in there seamlessly, performs seamlessly as well. You will notice that in this heel wedge, it does feel a little firmer than the forefoot. And again, you can see how that plate is probably part of that equation, a little more firm and stable back here, a little more ground feel. And I actually like that. Again, I like being connected to the ground without too much, especially for an ultra running shoe. So there's that. And flipping over to the bottom, we have Vibram Mega Grip Elite, which for us, they had it in the Norda 005 and in this shoe. Those are the only two shoes that have had Vibram Mega Grip Elite. And I say it goes 2 for 2 because it rocks. It's lighter than any other outsole compound. It's also just as grippy. And as far as I can tell, just as durable. These 3.5mm lugs also have that traction lug on it, unique shape here. They did awesome in a lot of different terrain, a lot of different conditions, even wet and some decent amount of mud. These gripped well. Part of that again is this broader outsole, full rubber coverage, and these really nice, just nicely shaped lugs that worked on a lot of different terrain. I have nothing bad to say about this outsole, and I really think this is going to be on par in terms of durability with basically any other outsole out there. And being able to be so light, love it, love it. So really, there's just a ton to love about this Brooks Cascadia Elite. Again, innovation kind of at its finest. We're getting into that, what feels like that tip of the spear era for trail racing shoes as well. And we have different categories now. This feels like a long distance trail racing shoe, what it's meant for. And again, a lot to love. Which takes us to our overall categories of form, fit, and function. How does this one perform against all others? And for form, when we look at the overall build, the materials used, the innovative side of this shoe, I'm gonna give it a 5. It has some of the highest quality materials, and it's not always easy to bring those together in a functional way, which we'll get to function here soon, but it's not always easy to bring those together in a way that feels so seamless, feels so good, and feels so performance oriented. The Brooks Cascadia Elite, giving you a 5 for form, just a great build overall. Fit. This is the only one that I've really teetered on. Again, it is more generous in the forefoot. Many will like that for their ultra distance racer, some will not. It also had a little bit of forefoot sliding this way and that. It was able to be mitigated, but it did cause some other issues that I had to solve throughout. And because of that, I'm really teetering between 3 and 4 on this one. I'm gonna bump it up to a 4, just because I really do love how this fits and feels in the heel and in the midfoot. Those are the places that can be secure. Again, like I said, it's not too performance inhibiting. If one of those areas is off, the heel, that's the hardest one, but they've got that on lockdown with this padding and structure in this integrated booty. So I'm gonna go up to 4 because I like all those. It's really just that minor problem of some forefoot slippage sometimes. Function. With ultra distance racing in mind, we need things like comfort, efficiency, and that little bit of edge of extra performance in terms of all these really nice materials. So for the ultra distance game, I'm giving this a 5 as well. And so overall, that comes to a 14 out of 15. That's about as perfect as you can get. Only a few shoes ever for us have achieved that level of satisfaction and performance. Brooks Cascadia Elite, I love this shoe. If I was going 50 to 100 miles, this is absolutely a shoe I would look at to get me to that finish line. And again, for Brooks being known for being kind of that steady Betty, I like that this is spicing things up. Brooks Cascadia Elite. Can't wait for more of you to get into it. Thank you for tuning into this review. There's many others on YouTube that you can check out. Also go to the website where all of these are written, plus a whole lot more for you in terms of run culture, other gear that we don't always get on video, and the latest happenings within running. Also go over to Instagram where we have the Dirt Division and Believe in the Run, and the podcast. Can't forget about the podcast. There's 3 of them throughout the week, 2 of them on the drop, 1 of them Fuel for the Soul, and Strava. Don't forget to join our Strava group. Stay connected throughout all your runs. We'll see you soon.